Deborah Winger as an FBI agent who falls for a murder suspect in Betrayed. Mark Harmon comes to grips with his past in Stealing Home. And Willem Dafoe portrays Jesus in Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
Rob a bank for? What did West die for? What did I shoot somebody for?
Deborah Winger is an FBI agent who gets in over her head when she goes undercover on a case and falls for Tom Berenger in the new thriller named Betrayed. It's one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing on this week's show, which will also include our opinions on The Last Temptation of Christ. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first movie is called Betrayed, and although it is overloaded with politics, we do follow the story based on another strong performance by Deborah Winger as an FBI agent sent into the Farm Belt to infiltrate a gang of white supremacists plotting to kill blacks and Jews and FBI agents and just about every officer of the federal government. Winger pretends to be a farm worker where she meets good-looking Tom Berenger, who turns out to be a ringleader of the group, as she discovers when he takes her out on a hunting party and she's stunned at what's being hunted. Shut up.
Jordy.
Before the hunt, Winger had fallen for Berenger, a widower and a Vietnam vet, but she is repulsed now, and sneaking away from town, Winger meets her FBI superiors and tells them she wants off the case.
You have to go back in.
No, I can't go back in.
I need you to link them with Krause. You're the only one who can do it.
How could I even look at him again?
She does stay on the case, and she returns to her motel room. Winger confronts Berenger. He doesn't know her true identity, but he does know that she didn't like that hunt.
You come back because you love me? Because if you do, I need to know. Say it. Please say it.
I love you.
She's very good in that scene, showing her repulsion at having to be with this man physically, who she thinks is now scum, but she also is dismayed that, as an FBI and a professional, that she couldn't read it. Very good scene. Evil in Betrayed, however, grows beyond the killing of a single black man to portray a nationwide network of people bent on overthrowing our government and killing lots of people. Such groups do exist, but Director Konstantin Konstagavras, I think, just gets carried away with the portrayal here. The film, I think, is at its best when the drama is small and violent and personal between Winger and Berenger. That is when Betrayed is compelling. When it gets into its full-blown conspiracy, I think the director loses control of the material. So a marginal thumbs up for me.
Well, it gets a thumbs down for me, even though, of course, it is based on a real case, and that's the murder of Alan Berg, that talk show host in Denver, yes. So we know that groups like this exist. And one of the most fascinating things for me in the movie was the complicated way in which it shows why Tom Berenger psychologically needs a group like this and why he can be a nice guy and attract her and fall in love with her and nevertheless be a murderer. But there were 2 things I didn't like about the movie. The first one was that hunt scene that you showed. That was a vile, racist scene. It was much too strong to belong in a movie like this, which is basically just a Hollywood entertainment. It made me very, very uncomfortable to watch. And I know, but it made me uncomfortable in the wrong way. That kind of thing should not be included as entertainment. It just doesn't qualify.
I don't think it's entertainment, Rob. I think that scene was very effective then for you, because I'm sure it's supposed to disturb you. Who wouldn't it? What else is its intent but to disturb you?
Well, I mean, if this were some kind of a really serious movie that was making an indictment of our system, then it could be in there. But it's not. It's a Hollywood star picture, let's face it.
I don't think so.
And the tip-off to that is the fact that the plot is so shamelessly manipulated, especially with that ludicrous FBI agent played by John Hurt, who was always turning up at the wrong place at the wrong time, saying the wrong thing, and doing his best to get her discovered so that she can be in danger, so that we can be excited. That manipulation, plus the scene of the black man being hunted, for me, it's a turn off, a thumbs down.
Well, you can have legitimate questions about the John Hurt character, but the other scene you're reading completely wrong. That's the whole intent of the movie. Winger's performance you didn't even mention. I think she's
I'll mention it. It's a great performance.
Okay.
I loved her performance, but to me, I mean, great performances can happen in movies that are unworthy of them, and this is a case of that.
No, it isn't.
Next movie, and our next movie is named Stealing Home, but this is a movie that probably couldn't even steal second. It's one of the sappiest, most pathetic movies of the year, and it doesn't even seem to know that most of its most sincere moments are simply recycled and corny cliches out of other movies. The film is about a has-been baseball player who was inspired as a young man by a slightly older girl who kind of symbolized freedom and spirit to him. Now, she's played by Jodie Foster, and here is a flashback where the young hero remembers what a great character she used to be.
Bo diddly, have you heard? Oh, no! Hey! My word, baby, she wasn't murdered. Come on! You don't even say anything about What do we do? Wait!
In another flashback, the kid, now a teenager, and his best friend have an argument about who's getting to first base with whose prom date.
You had sex with my prom date.
Albie,
God.
Albie, I didn't. I'll talk to her tonight.
Now it's many years later, and the two old friends meet again.
I'm an upstanding member of this community. I've got kids, Bill. I cannot afford to go to jail.
Appleby, just do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that old put on the lights and let's play the game by ourselves in an empty ballpark routine. How many times have we seen that?
Maybe 10.
At least 10. Now, one of the interesting things about the three scenes that we just saw is that the hero, Billy, is played by three different actors there. Thatcher Goodwin when he's 10, William McNamara when he's 16, and finally as an adult by Mark Harmon. And his buddy is played by two different actors at various ages, and one of the really frustrating aspects of this movie is that the flashbacks are constructed in such a bewildering way that often you don't know what character they're even about. Meanwhile, the Jodie Foster character kills herself. That's the premise for the movie. She leaves her ashes to Billy, who must now return home and, of course, come to grips with the meaning of his life and her life, and also find the perfect place to spread the ashes. The incredible thing about Stealing Home is that it's played seriously. The only way this material would work would be as a merciless satire on itself.
This is one of the worst movies of the year.
Ever made.
Oh, well, yes. Oh, why not? I mean, why not have some fun and say that? Because I certainly had a lot of pain watching the film. First of all, Mark Harmon is a celebrity name. And if people go to see this picture expecting to see Mark Harmon, you will not see Mark Harmon. What's stunning, I mean, you'll see him, but basically what Mark Harmon does in this movie is walk along and think for a second, and then there's a flashback. I mean, this guy put in just a couple of weeks' work at the most, and is going to be top billed or top billed in this picture, and that's a fraudulent thing. The second thing is the whole business about where to put the ashes. I mean, come on, that's cornball material too.
Didn't you know the moment that, I mean, obviously he has to put the ashes at the point where he had this wonderful scene with Jodie Foster. And, oh my God, that's right. That's rough. But now I ask myself this question. Why did she commit suicide? This wonderful woman who gave him this sense of life and this sense of adventure, and it was his guide when he was younger. Why did she commit suicide? You know what answer I came up with?
He was a bore.
No, he was a bore. That would be one answer. But he hasn't seen her in 10 years. So now I came up with another answer. She committed suicide so that there would be ashes. So then he would have to figure out where to put them. I mean, the movie never gives her, even though she's this legend in his life, never gives her the credit of even telling us why she wanted to kill herself.
No, she had to kill herself so there could be a movie being made.
That's right.
Coming up next, our reaction to the most controversial film in years, Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ.
God's world is big enough for everybody.
Nazarene, that's against the law. Oh, I've got a headache this big. It feels like a truck ran over my head. But I took 2 Excedrin. That's all it'll take.
I may be little, but I'm tough. Better than half those guys. especially Spider Krinsky. He can't dribble for anything. I think Coach keeps me on the bench because I'm small. That makes me so mad. I explained it to Mom. Now she gives me extra big breakfast so I can grow. A right of hash brown, eggs, the works. I put it away, and I tell Mom that a right of hash browns might really help my hook shot. So she gives me more. Dad says I'm pretty smart for a jock.
My headache's gone. 2 Excedrin and it's gone.
When you want extra strength headache relief, take Excedrin, the headache medicine.
That's all it takes.
This is the totally redesigned Colt GT with a new 16-valve fuel-injected turbo power plant. What's it like to drive one? How was it?
Not bad.
The Colt GT, imported by Plymouth and Dodge dealers.
For under $6, you could have some hot, delicious pasta at an Italian restaurant. Sizzler. Or a crisp tostada at a Mexican restaurant. Sizzler. A seafood salad at a seafood restaurant. Sizzler. Or soup and salad at almost any restaurant. Sizzler. Or for the same money, you could get Sizzler's salad bar and have all of them. Sizzler, a fresh experience.
Our next film is the controversial The Last Temptation of Christ. And I almost want to say to everybody, you've heard the protest, now see the movie. Because it is quite extraordinary. A film that truly generated a religious experience within me, portraying a more human Jesus, one who trembles at God's calling, and yet manages, to his own amazement, at times, to spread the message of love. As in this scene where he speaks up for the right of the prostitute Mary Magdalene to attend a wedding.
You don't belong at a wedding. We're here to celebrate purity.
I'm sorry, but these people are my guests. Please. Let me explain something to you. What do you think heaven's like? It's like a wedding. God's the bridegroom, and man's spirit's the bride. The wedding takes place in heaven, and everyone's invited. God's world is big enough for everybody.
Nazarene, that's against the law.
Then the law is against my heart.
That's Willem Dafoe, the good sergeant from Platoon. Quite effective as Jesus, a difficult role to play, to say the least. Here he is, railing against the money changers, soiling the spirit of the temple. That coin image stays in our mind. What is money really worth? As does the simple image of Jesus carrying the cross. This Jesus is more than a standard misunderstood God we see in most biblical films. This Jesus knows that it is harder to be a good man than to be God. The Last Temptation of Christ was masterfully directed by Martin Scorsese from Paul Schrader's script of the equally controversial novel by Nikos Kazantzakis, who came up with the idea of accenting the human, doubting quality of Jesus. The effect, at least on me, was not to trash Jesus, but rather to make his message more accessible. For if he has doubts and fears, we can be more comfortable with our own. It's a very simple construction, and it works beautifully. If he can resist some temptation after really struggling with it, maybe we can too, rather than the thunderbolt kind of Lord that is presented in most biblical films. The Last Temptation of Christ thus becomes a magnificent story of challenge and of hope.
You know, Gene, you said you had a religious experience when you saw this film.
I certainly did
too. This movie made me think more deeply and more seriously, and for a longer time, I'm still thinking about it, about the mystery of the fact that Jesus was both God and man, at least within the Christian teaching, that's what he was, than any other film I've ever seen, or at any other time in my life. Did I really confront that he was God and he was man. He had all of the weaknesses of man, as well as all of the strength of God. And this movie is a devout movie that does Jesus the compliment of taking him more seriously than any other movie ever made. So that it's an ironic, I think, contradiction that people who worship Jesus and who haven't seen the film are attacking this film, which is actually more of a religious experience than any other movie that they could think of about Jesus.
The controversy is quite silly. I mean, people can have their objections based on what they've seen, of course, but if they haven't seen it, I mean, it's just so silly.
If God had wanted, God had a lot of choices in terms of sending his word down to man. He could have sent us all a letter in the mail, you know, or telepathically informed us of everything. He sent his son because he wanted to do that as a symbol, as a story that we could then read and learn from in terms of the fact that he so loved man that he made his only begotten son into a man. So therefore, that kind of story is a story that needs to be retold and reinterpreted for every generation in terms of the symbolism that God was trying to put into it. That's why this movie is so valid.
This is a special film.
It's a good movie. Coming up next, Michelle Pfeiffer is an unhappy mafia wife in Married to the Mob.
What are you going to do about it? I want a divorce.
Northern bathroom tissue has a special kind of softness because it's quilted. And you can feel the difference quilting makes. Northern, quilted for a special kind of softness.
Our next movie is named Married to the Mob, and this is the new comedy by Jonathan Demme, whose recent movies have included the strange and entertaining Something Wild and the offbeat one-man monologue Swimming to Cambodia. This time he tells the story of a mafia wife, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, whose husband is a hitman for the mob. Now, there are times when she gets tired of their mafia lifestyle.
I want a normal life. I'm sick and tired of the gambling, the guns, bailing you out of jail, never knowing when you're going to come home, if you're going to come home. Look at this place. Everything we wear, everything we eat, everything we own fell off a truck.
That's Alec Baldwin as Pfeiffer's husband, Frank, who is nicknamed the Cucumber for a variety of reasons. The movie also has some fun with the personal style of the mob boss, played by Dean Stockwell.
Excuse me, Mr. Russo.
A motel tryst later that night will lead to Frank the Cucumber's murder, and when the mob boss gets ideas that he might be just the man to comfort the new widow, his wife, played by Mercedes Ruehl, warns Pfeiffer to keep her hands off.
You better call it off, because if I ever catch you two together,
And Mercedes Ruehl is terrific in this film. Meanwhile, one of the FBI guys following Pfeiffer begins to fall for her, and he is played by Matthew Modine.
Oh, God, don't stop. That feels great. Can't remember the last time a man touched me below the waist. Huh? I can't believe I said that.
The movie's climax has everybody in Miami Beach with the mafia boss suspecting that Pfeiffer may have led the FBI right to him.
Angela?
Yeah.
Come over here and meet Mike Smith from Dubuque.
Married to the Mob has a lot of big laughs in it, especially in that very good last scene. But for a movie, it's kind of disjointed, and it never really seems to develop the comic tension that it needs. It seems to be a series of isolated moments and small little gags over on the side and little cutaways to funny little small things, while the main line of the story kind of gets neglected. There are two very good performances in the movie by Dean Stockwell as the mafia boss and by Mercedes Ruehl as his wife. But I was disappointed by Michelle Pfeiffer as the heroine because she didn't bring much comic energy to the role. She seemed more like a bystander, an acted-upon person. And I was baffled by the way Matthew Modine's role was written. His role was so goofy and so unfocused, you never knew what to think about him. The movie starts with a good idea, but I think it grows self-indulgent.
I had a similar reaction to the picture. I enjoyed, I mean, when she says about everything in our life fell off the back of a truck, I am with this movie and I am laughing, and the premise is great. As it develops, there are characters that I liked, and I will recommend the film, but I'm recommending it with a warning that it falls steadily downhill. I think that when you blame Pfeiffer's performance, I think it's the way the character is written. I think the film just spins off into including too many elements. I don't know what happens there. I think it could have stayed tighter with her and the mafia boss. I just think that there's too many things that he's trying to throw in this picture.
Well, it seems to me that, in a way, her character, then if it is her character, not her performance, is too passive. She doesn't really like being married to the mob. She doesn't like the fact that the mob boss is chasing her, but she She isn't kind of a gutsy person who really wants to take control of things. She allows everyone to sweep her along.
She should have been, here she's been living in a tough life, and she's going to be tough enough to break out of the tough life, then she should be tough enough to have the movie be about her character and how she fends and
because in a way, the mob boss's wife, Mercedes Rule, is the person who, if they'd taken that strength of character and put it in the central role, would have been a different movie. Coming up next, Hero and the Terror, with Chuck Norris as the hero chasing a multiple murderer known as Terror.
Just the other day, someone asked me what I thought of the new Chuck Norris action picture called Hero and the Terror. I told this person it was quite awful and amazingly simple-minded. For example, I said, Chuck Norris plays a cop who put away a bad guy years ago, but he can't stand the nickname he was given for his efforts by the press. The nickname? Hero. Very clever. And the animal he put in jail? He has a nickname, too. Terror. Very clever. The action here is equally lead-footed as Norris, still using his karate instincts instead of a gun, confronts the bad guy once again after he breaks out of jail. While their battle goes on, the script tries to humanize Norris's character by giving him a pregnant girlfriend who is stronger at times than he is.
What's the patient's name, please?
O'Brien. I mean, Kennedy.
Yes, I have your patient here, Mrs. Kennedy.
Breathe.
Yes, she's in active labor now.
Breathe.
Thank you.
Breathe.
She's on her way, sir.
Okay. Breathe. Breathe.
Daddy!
Hero and the Terror is the most predictable film I've seen in quite some time. You will guess every shot, from the breakout to the women in jeopardy to that fainting. What you may not be able to do, however, is stop laughing at those two nicknames. I couldn't stop laughing at them. Hero and Terror. He lives in fear of being called Hero.
Yeah, well, I was disappointed by the movie. I know that Chuck Norris is trying to widen his image by putting a little more human interest into it, but the human interest doesn't have anything to do with the story because the payoff isn't there, in which you would expect that his pregnant girlfriend would be threatened by Terror and he has to save her. But no, that entire story has nothing to do with Terror. It's just over in another part of his life, and then he's chasing this guy around this enormous movie theater. And I have a question for you, Gene. You know, the first time that he goes right past the killer's lair, he can't find it. Now, later on, he looks at the blueprints and sees where it must be, and he goes back and finds it. Can you think of a clue that should have tipped him off the first time, and would that clue be the several decomposing bodies inside the lair?
I think that might be the clue. Roger, I think this movie is, you know, we talked about the other one being one of the worst movies ever made. This is just junk. I mean, I didn't think this film was worthy even of discussing it a second longer than we have.
Better than the other one. Not one
we
of the
can't
worst.
even think of the name of the other one. It's so bad.
I can think of it. I'm just not going to tell you.
Okay.
It's one of the worst. It's better than one of the worst movies ever made. Now let's recap the reviews, the movies that we reviewed on this program. We had a split decision on the thriller Betrayed. We liked the performances, but I have big objections to a couple of scenes. 1 thumb up, 1 down. 2 thumbs down for one of the worst movies ever made. Now, I'll admit it, I did just think of the name. It's Stealing Home. 2 thumbs up for The Last Temptation of Christ by Martin Scorsese, a movie that made us both think long and seriously about God and man. A split decision on Married to the Mob. We both liked the idea, but I felt the plot was all over the map. And finally, 2 thumbs down for Hero and the Terror, with Chuck Norris as a romantic lead in a stupid plot. So obviously, Last Temptation of Christ, which is now opening more broadly around the country, is a movie that I think people would think about and talk about after they saw it.
Absolutely, and I liked parts of Deborah Winger's performance in Betrayed, and I think that's enough to recommend that film. That's it for this week. Next time, we'll be back with reviews of more big summer movies, including Richard Dreyfuss as an actor pretending to be a dictator in the comedy Moon Over Parador.
You're a funny guy.
What a psychotic.
Also, we'll look at Running on Empty with River Phoenix as the troubled son of a radical father on the run, played by Judd Hirsch. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Nestle Crunch. It's creamy milk chocolate and crispy crunchies. Chocolate is scrumptious when it crunches. That's why you'll love Nestle Crunch. Perk up your foods with a great taste of Bertolli olive oil. Extra virgin, Classico, and extra light. Bertolli. No cholesterol. Bon appetito. Edge shaving gel. The 6 lubricant defense against razor irritation. Tappan SureCook Space Saver Microwave is perfect for kitchens where space is at a premium. Tap and Touch solid state controls, automatic temperature probe, and wood grain decor, furnished by Tappan.